Hello and welcome back to Starting Six, a volleyball podcast with Haley and Liv. Before we really get into things, I have some explaining to do. 2 weeks ago, we took a week off because our schedules didn't align. And then last week, we recorded an hour and a half fabulous episode. It was funny. It was witty. We looked stunning. And when we concluded, I went to turn the recording off and there was no recording to turn off. So there was no episode last week because it takes a lot of energy for us to get all that out, and we weren't going to do it again. No. So I'll take the L on that one. But we are recording now. I triple checked, and Liv told me it is. So we're both going to be default if this doesn't work. But that's why we've been missing. So, it feels good to officially recorded be back.
We're back.
Okay, moving forward, we have some good games to talk about for sure. Definitely some fun points to make, and a couple of upsets that I really want to touch on. And then I'm excited to rehash my bench from last week because I was really upset that no one got to hear that but you.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to kind of get into that. So unless you have any housekeeping notes, we can just jump right in.
No, I'm just, casually watching on the side the SMU Stanford game. So if there's any big updates, I'll let you know. But Stanford is up 1-0 and is up 23-21 in the second set. So I'll give live updates.
Yeah, and this is why we usually don't record on Wednesdays. But again, yes, but schedules are busy, weekends are busy, life happens, work happens. Wedding planning happens, hockey season happens, so you get what you get. But yeah, unfortunate timing on the Wednesday part. Okay, let's dive into it then, shall we? Okay, I want to talk about number 1 Pitt losing to number 15 SMU. Now, I think we all knew that it was, I shouldn't really say it. I think we all kind of knew it was bound to happen, that Pitt was going to lose eventually, right? I was picturing Penn State, Nebraska, Louisville, one of those teams maybe. Wasn't predicting SMU.
No, I wasn't. But then at the same time, I'm not surprised just because how SMU's year has gone so far. And also I think a big factor in this is the doubleheader against them. Because we talked on our unrecorded podcast that it is so hard to beat a team twice, in a season, let alone one after another. And I think it works for the team that may lose the first one, and then it usually doesn't end up working out for the team that won that first match. And so I think that's kind of what happened here, even though it was a 5-set thriller, great match. I think it's just hard, the mentality of it, the energy of it, the atmosphere of it, all of it combined. It's hard to play a team back to back, whether there's a day in between or not. It's just hard. And so I think that's kind of what we saw, and great for SMU, but rough for Pitt because it doesn't look great on them. Even though, like I said, it was 5 sets, it still doesn't look great. You could have just pushed a little bit more, right? You're the number 1 team. We expect you to be able to close out that 5th set, right? Push a little bit more, make those big plays at the end. But SMU was just a scrappy and gritty team. And I think that's how they're able to survive those 5 sets. And also how they've been able to sweep teams too, because I think they just come out of the gates and balls to the walls, they have nothing to lose. And teams weren't expecting that in the beginning when they were sweeping ranked teams, Nebraska. People weren't expecting SMU to be good, and then they were, and it totally took them back. And then they're like, shoot, we actually have to play volleyball, and then it was too late. So now I think teams are catching on a little bit more, and so that's why Pitt's SMU game went to 5, but then they just really had it in them to finish out strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's kind of one of those things, and I think that you and I have experienced this a lot in our careers, especially the years that we played with each other, is that there are games you go into with a mentality, whether you like it or not, subconsciously, where you're going, oh, we're going to kill them, easy win, no big deal. And then there's also games you go into where you're like, we're going to get our asses kicked, and that's just probably going to be the way it goes. Now, you don't say those thoughts out loud, but they definitely sit in your head, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this could be really bad. Oh my God. Okay. So I think that when you have a season like Pitt has been having where they're in the limelight, they've been number 1 since September 9th. Like it's, and I mean, they still are, but like, it's crazy. This kind of pedestal that Pitt has been put on. And when you're in those kind of moments, I think that sometimes you forget that you being on that pedestal, it doesn't necessarily make you like a goal. It makes you a target. It makes you an enemy. And I think that SMU, like you said, just came into it and they were like, if we can beat Nebraska, we can beat Pitt. And that was the mentality that they had. I took notes. I think this is major for 2 reasons. One, I think that this proves that Pitt and Nebraska do in fact have weaknesses and can be beaten. I wouldn't be surprised if teams watch film from this game and SMU beating Nebraska to figure out where the holes are. Where are the holes in Nebraska's offense? How do we get in their heads? How do we stop them? And then same for Pitt. So I think it is really interesting that a team like SMU goes in and does what has kind of been the quote unquote impossible of this season so far. And then now teams get to look at that and figure out how to continue to take Pitt and Nebraska apart piece by piece in order to be the conference champions, in order to make it farther in the NCAA, tournament and those kind of things. So I think that's really kind of an interesting feat. The other thing that I think is interesting and why I think this is huge is that this means that Louisville could lose to this ACC team. They play in SMU on October 27th. This could be like if SMU beats Louisville, like that's going to jumble the standings up so much. And the NCAA, that's going to throw a huge wrench in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of crazy because up until October 4th, Pitt was 30, what was it? Did I just read 36-0 in sets? And then they dropped 1 to Boston College, and then they dropped those 3. So they're still have a great record, but not as shiny as it once was. And then Louisville is 6-0 in conference right now in the ACC conference. So even with 1 loss to SMU, that would be pretty big, not only in conference standing, but also in like the national standing. And I think that would honestly really shake up Louisville. I feel like they are on like this teeter, like the seesaw where anything could just like pull the rug right under them and it's going to all crumble. And I feel like we've saw that in the beginning, like they were really kind of shooken and like could be shaken up. Which I think we thought Pitt you couldn't shake up right until this. So it'll be interesting to see how that match plays out with Louisville and to see how they respond either way.
Yeah. Honestly, when we were talking about the rankings, because Pitt is still at number 1, and I can't remember off the top of my head where SMU ended up. Do you know off the top of your head?
They're number 12 right now.
Okay. So a lot of people were, and we go back and forth about these rankings all the time, mostly for our personal opinions. Like the facts are probably the facts and the numbers are probably the numbers. But I thought it was really interesting when me and Taylor were talking in our group chat about Pitt still being number 1. And I thought you had a really great explanation. So I don't know if you could just like repeat that on here for people who like might not understand, like, why is SMU not number 1? Why is SMU not top 5? Because I thought you had like a really good explanation for it.
Yeah, I'll just read it. So we kind of all thought that Nebraska was going to take over the number 1 spot over Pitt. But both Pitt and Nebraska lost to the same team. Granted, they were at different times in the season. When Nebraska lost to SMU, SMU was an unranked team and it was a sweep. So like that's a pretty big thing, even though it was at the beginning of the season, and so they didn't have a chance to necessarily be ranked. Now Pitt loses to SMU, they're already a ranked team, and it goes to 5. So you can just kind of see like, yes, it's the same team that they lost to, but the situation and the timing of when it happened, and then how many games it took them to beat it kind of went to my thought as to why Pitt was still number 1 versus Nebraska, because Pitt technically still won two sets against SMU, where Nebraska didn't win any against them. So that was my thought process. as to why, but I could be totally wrong
Yeah.
in that. Again, we are not experts in the rankings, and we would like to be. So that was just kind of my thought as to why I was surprised, but then also not surprised at the same time that it did stay like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think that yeah, it's like hard to determine that, right? Because I think that, like, in my opinion, in the early year, like part of the year, Texas was really quick to get bumped from that number one spot. And they did lose their first game they lost was to a ranked team. So I do feel like I felt like at the time that Texas was quick to get like knocked off. Now, a lot of teams are also like, or a lot of people are also wondering like, how is SMU still 12? Like, they beat the number one team in the country. This team hasn't lost yet. And I think that it really does go to show why the conference that you play in is so important. Now, granted, SMU has lost games to unranked teams. So I think that that's, kind of a, factor in that. Yeah. But I think at the same time, it just really shows like the conference that you're in determines the competition that you play, and the competition that you play and the competition that you beat determines where you are on the rankings. And so I do think that this is an ode to the SEC and to the Big Ten, especially as to how hard it is to break into that top 10 because of those bigger conference where the competition is heavier.
Yeah. And unfortunately for some of those teams where their conference isn't as great, they're never going to break that top 10. Like, it's nearly impossible for SMU at this point, I think. And again, could be wrong, but like for them to really break, maybe they could get to number 10 if they win out the rest of the year. But that means that a lot of those teams that are up there, which are great teams, have to be losing pretty big. And so I feel like they're just kind of stuck and kind of where they can be at this point, which 12 is great, right? You're number 12 in the country. That's insane. But with the competition that they're going to have the rest of the year and their record so far, I think that they're kind of at their max, maybe can move up 1 or 2 spots, but I don't think the teams that are above them are going to drop that much in the rest of the season. Like maybe 1 spot go up and down, but not enough to move them all the way up past like number 9.
Yeah, I do think a win against Louisville would bump them to either 10 or barely breaking in. But when you look at the sheer amount of like teams that are in that top 10, like those teams are playing massive competition, beating massive competition, have started out their year playing massive competition. So I do think it's almost an impossible feat. We'll see if they can do it. And I also hope too, like in the same breath, that this run that they're on, I hope they don't falter. Like I think I hope they really hold on to the momentum, and I think they should make the ACC a little bit more interesting. I think it is always heavy on Pitt and Louisville. I'd like to see another team in there, like giving them all a run for their money. So at the very least, it's like entertainment.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch on before we move on, I was looking at some of the comments on Instagram. The NCAA posted the upset graphic for this game, and I just was curious what other people were saying. And I noticed 2 things that I want to get kind of your opinion on, or maybe I just really want your opinion on one thing. But the one point I do want to make quick is a lot of people were saying that Pitt has been relying way too heavily on Olivia Babcock in the last few games. So again, just reiterating our, spread the wealth, mantra that we, like we stand on our soapbox. But I do think it's important. And I think that this is kind of what happens when you like don't do that. And it is kind of unfortunate because Pitt is a team, when I've watched them, that they do a very good job at that.
Yeah.
The other point, or what I want your opinion on too, is another comment that really caught my eye, and this could totally be opinion. Like I don't, I'm not saying that this is like stone, hard facts or whatever. But someone said that every time that Pitt lost a point during this match, which I'm going to assume that this probably picked up in the second or third set, when Pitt would lose a point, I'm assuming unforced errors, most likely, they looked like they wanted to kill each other. And I thought that was really interesting because I don't think that that's like an overly common thing that we see on these big, like these huge teams. So I'm kind of interested, like what your opinion is, because boy, do we know that story all too well.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like possibly from like our own experience, or when I've had that look on my face, like, are you freaking kidding me? It's when you are losing to a team you should be beating, right? I think that energy and that mindset is coming from, what the heck are we doing? Like, we need to get it together, and more of the like intensity aspect coming out from each of them, and then it's being portrayed wrongly to each other, and then the chemistry and the whole energy and vibe on the court is different. And I think we've experienced that a lot, and it takes so much to get rid of that. Like, once you're in that and you're like, can we just freaking win this? It takes everything from everyone to change that momentum and to change that mindset from being like so intense that you looked pissed at each other and you kind of are pissed at each other, to being like intense and having fun and just enjoying the game. And so I'm curious if that's kind of where that came from, but I haven't been able to watch Pitt enough to know if that's kind of how they always are, because there's some teams that are just like the cheering teams, right? No matter what, they're just always laughing and giggling and cheering. Mm-hmm. And then there's other teams that are more like Solomon, just like, hey, we're here to get business done. Like, we're here to get shit done. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily know what Pitt usually looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like they're usually a pretty like unified front, but I have like two theories on this, and I think one of them is, when you're the number one team in the country, I think it's normal, especially remembering like the age demographic that we're looking at, and the fact that this could be a horrible thing to say or a stereotypical thing to say, but it is a team of women, and I think that it's normal to be on a team that is the number one team in the country and has been the number one team in the country. People are paying attention. People are all eyes on you. They want to know what's going to happen. They want to see you fail. They want to see you succeed. I think it's normal to have a part of you want to be the best on the team, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's normal to be like, I want to show up. I want to show out, whether you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it for your team. Like, I don't care what the logistics are to it, but there's always going to be that sliver of you that's like, I want to be the one on the, cover of this. I want to be the one.
No matter what team, there's always that person. No matter if you're the number one team or the last ranked team, like, you always want to be the best on your team, no matter how many eyes are on you. So I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think that the other kind of theory that I have is like, this is where, to me, Pitt and Nebraska separate, because I think that Nebraska has a really strong leader in Merritt Beeson. And I think that in moments like this, when you see them start to falter, you really see her step up into a leadership position to make sure that, if this is the case, which I'm not saying that it was, but if it is, that shit gets shut down immediately and we move on. And I think that that's something that Merritt Beeson has done exceptionally well at since she became a captain at Nebraska.
Yeah, and I think too with Nebraska, and again, I can't speak too much about Pitt because I haven't been able to watch them, but I've noticed when watching Nebraska, when that starts to happen, when girls are not playing well and then are getting kind of pissy or their energy is down or whatever, John Cook is very quick to pull them out. Like, over the last week of watching them, who were they playing? Purdue. When they were playing against Purdue, Lindsay Krause, she was not playing well, right? And she was getting quiet, and just the look on her face was not what it usually looks like. Out. Like, he pulled her very quick, gave her a few chances, right, to kind of figure it out. But when he gave her 2, 3, 4, and it wasn't changing, and girls were trying to help her out and keep the energy high, she was out, Landfair was in, right? Landfair wasn't doing hot. She wasn't doing hot. She wasn't bringing any energy. Okay. Gave you a shot. Nope. Switch it back. Right. And so I would be curious to know if Pitt's coach is doing something similar, right? If whoever is that kind of starter of that energy shift, if he just lets them stay in, right? Is it their top player that has that? Are you going to keep her in, even though she's not playing well, but maybe better than everyone else's best day? Or are you going to pull her and put someone in with the better energy to keep the momentum? And I feel like we've had experience when coaches don't pull that person when they should. And you can only do so much with it. If there's still that one person that has just a shit attitude, you will not win. Like, you can't, because they are pulling so much out of you, trying to help them. You cannot do what you need to do as a player.
Yeah, it's almost like distracting too.
Yeah.
In a way. Like, I think that when you're playing volleyball and there's 5 other people on your side of the net that are determining your mood, your actions, like, you like genuinely do feel like a tug, like of like a rope or string or whatever you want to say between you guys. And when that kind of tension of that is off, it's extremely distracting. And I think that that's where the kind of like energy pull sort of comes from too, is that you're just constantly like, I shouldn't have to be worrying about you. Like, you should be doing your job. I should know I can trust you. I should know I can rely on you. So when you get in these like funks, it's like, can I trust you? Like, are you going to be there? Like, can you speak? Like, it's kind of one of those like things where it's just distracting and your brain starts to figure out what's happening there instead of focusing on what you need to be doing on the others, like to the people on the other side of the net. So I think that it's definitely a delicate line. But it would be interesting to see like how they kind of bounce back from this. Pitt does play Stanford on Sunday, and then they play Louisville next Friday, the 25th. So it's going to be a big week for them. So I am intrigued to see kind of how they bounce back. And I don't think this is going to be like end all be all for Pitt by any means, but sometimes teams have a really hard time bouncing back from stuff like this. Take Wisconsin, take Texas, for example. They have a hard time. So it'll be interesting to see how they go up against Stanford and Louisville this next week.
Yeah.
Okay, let's actually perfect transition. Let's talk about Purdue and Nebraska. I was so looking forward to this game. Like, I was so excited to watch good volleyball, and for once, I finally got what I wanted. Like, this was fantastic volleyball. For anyone who missed it, Purdue lost to Nebraska in 5. They shouldn't have lost, but they served pretty much every other serve out of bounds. It was so insane to watch. I was like, I couldn't believe the tally like that they were keeping. Like, every time they popped up, like they had almost a full set of service errors.
Yeah, it was bad.
And Nebraska had like none.
Yeah, and they weren't making it up with aces either. So like, it's okay if you have 4 missed serves, but then 5 aces, right? It cancels each other out. But when you have 20 missed serves and 2 aces, well, yeah, you're gonna lose, right? Like, you can't do that. I get serving aggressively, but also just like get it in the court. Like, what are we doing? Yeah,
it was tough to watch. You could tell they were frustrated too. But overall, I thought Purdue's performance was so impressive. And to tell you the truth, besides the service errors, I thought that Purdue looked like the better team. Like, I thought that as a unit, I thought their serve receive was really good. Their defense was incredible.
Insane.
And I think that Eva Hudson and Chloe Chacoin are 2 of the most terrifying hitters in the Big Ten.
And like, I mean, honestly, I'm a little bit more terrified of Chloe Chacoin. Like, she played lights out. Like, no one gives her enough credit. She is an undersized hitter. She is only a sophomore. She's playing 6 rotations. She is insane. Like, I am in awe of her. And everyone's always Eva Hudson, and Eva's great, right? She's awesome as well. But I'm like, give her some love too, because holy crap. And I mean, I was so impressed with Purdue, and I agree with you. Other than the service errors, they were the better team and a more coherent unit, and everyone was playing well. Raven Colvin was having monster blocks. Like, she was playing crazy. I was also really impressed with Purdue's setter. I thought she did a really good job spreading it out, and their defense was great. So, I mean, props to Purdue. I'm kind of, in a way, bummed that they didn't beat Nebraska.
Yeah, I am bummed.
That sounds weird and it sounds bad, but I really thought that they could do it. And on Nebraska's side, they need to figure out that second outside hitter. They have Harper Murray, and she's kind of set in stone, but between Lindsay Krause and Taylor Landfair, one of them has to figure it out, right? We've had Lindsay in that spot for most of the season, but something kind of shifted during that game. And then Taylor Landfair went in, and no offense to her, she looked horrible when she came in. Like, she missed, like, the first 3 hits were like out or in the net. I was like,
I know.
Did you not play for Minnesota? Did you not win Big Ten Player of the Year? Like,
I know.
did you just walk off the street? I was like, look and act like you want to be here. And I get that's just her personality, but oh my goodness, I can't.
It was hard to watch. It was hard. I don't know, like, I don't know if it's I get so conflicted on this, right? Because I've been in a spot during my career where I'm like, I don't know if I want to play volleyball anymore. Like, I'm not having fun.
Yeah.
And I think that Taylor Landfair, and this is just me and my opinion and my theories, is that I don't think she was happy at Minnesota. And I can understand that that's the reason why she went into the transfer portal. If you're not happy, there's no reason you should stay there, because you're suffering and the girls are suffering, and that's not good for anybody. But I think that there is definitely a sliver of her that was, thinking that if you're going to commit to Nebraska, that you're going to play there, like why would a player that's as awarded as Taylor Landfair and talented, I mean, she's talented. Why would you commit to a team where you don't think you're going to see the court? I mean, this is a young team, Nebraska is. Like, there's not a lot of people graduating. And so I just think it was an interesting choice on her part. And so in that case, I don't really feel bad for her, because like you knew what you were getting yourself into, as long as, things weren't being said to you behind closed doors, which we also know that can be the case. So it is, I don't know. There's part of me that's like, God, that sucks. But then there's also part of me that's like, well, you did transfer to Nebraska.
Yeah. And what you said she knew what she was coming into, right? There was no one that had left. It's not like, or anyone that was injured. And I don't know kind of what that thought process was. And I think you had said it, whether it's on the podcast or just in conversation, but was it because she thought that Nebraska had the chance at getting that championship and she just wanted to be a part of that team? Maybe. If so, hey, who cares? If you want that ring, go get it, right? And if that you're cool with just being on the sidelines and contributing at times, but not all the time, hey, fine. Go for it. Like, that's up to you. But then when you get the chance to play, at least look like you want to be there. Like, when you're on the court, look like you want to be there and you want to play. I had this problem with her when she was at Minnesota, right? You're 6th rotation outside hitter, all eyes on you. You look like you want to kill yourself. Like, that sounds really harsh, but your facial expressions, you don't cheer when you get a kill. You don't cheer when your other teammates get a kill. Like, you're just blah. And I know I've played with other players who aren't the people to jump up and down and stuff and like get in your face, and that's fine, but they look happy to be there.
Yeah.
And I've just never really seen that from Taylor Landfair other than her freshman year.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we said it last year too, when she was still at Minnesota. We were just like, what's happening to her? So I don't know. It's like a hard thing, right? Like, it sucks if you're not happy, and not playing sucks, and everybody knows that. But at the same time, I think that that's what happens when you transfer into a program like Nebraska has right now. I don't think that like I do see a world in which Taylor Landfair is the other starting outside. I do see that. I just think you're right. Like, I think that a huge opportunity and a huge moment was given to her, and she just didn't take it for everything that it was. She did play through the 5th set, I believe. But she was in and out with Lindsay after her first appearance. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how she balances with the other girls' energy, because she just doesn't. So yeah, and I do hope that like everything's okay. Like, if there's a greater deal going on, because that's just like a horrible way to feel. But if there is nothing going on and that's just how she's acting, I think it's, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, unfortunate. I do think that this is a big step for Nebraska towards that Big Ten title.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping that a Purdue win would really shake that up, and it would like now the playing field between Nebraska and Purdue and Penn State. And I wish I could say Wisconsin, but I don't feel confident saying that. At least between those 3 teams, it would feel level again. But I think this just gave Nebraska that kind of boost.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of time. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next two, I just want to kind of briefly like touch on these just because I think that it's kind of interesting. But my next title is like Utah versus everyone. Not sure what happened in Utah this past week. But they hosted number 17 TCU last Thursday and swept them. They kept TCU's hitters to under 10 kills. Not a single TCU hitter had 10. And then 2 days later, they hosted number 18 Baylor, and they swept them. And they kept Baylor's hitters to under 10 kills. Elise McGee had 5 kills.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Baylor's top hitter had 7.
Damn.
That's insane. So I don't know about this Utah team, but I thought that was interesting. They had a huge week, and yeah, we'll like see what happens because those are 2 really big wins. TCU is a huge team to beat right now. Like, you and I know, we know how we are with Baylor, okay? They're inconsistent. They're a beatable team. To me, TCU has felt kind of untouchable. Like, I thought that their ranking was too low.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So, big things coming out of Utah.
Yeah, we'll see if they can keep that up.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was like just like a fluke of a week, but crazy. That's a really crazy thing. The other thing too, I just want to touch on quick before we get to our bench start is UCLA beat number 24 Washington.
Yeah.
I thought this was really cool. And then I did notice too that Oregon swept USC. So these are the 4 new Big Ten teams. So it's kind of fun to watch them go at it a little bit. But yeah, UCLA, like there you are. Where have you been? Like, where have you been?
Yeah.
Yeah, they won in 4. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, and UCLA and USC played for the Battle of LA. I watched a little bit of that, and USC won in 4. Maybe.
No, I didn't actually watch that.
Maybe,
but I thought that I didn't.
I think it was in 4. I can't remember though. But I thought they did a pretty good job, like against USC. I mean, USC is a good team. They're not the top ranked team in the Big Ten right now. But I thought UCLA held their own against them. So it'll be interesting to see when they play some of the lower ranked teams in the Big Ten, Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, Ohio State, all those teams. I mean, they might have already played them, but to see how they compete, because I think they're pretty comparable to those teams. And I think they'll have good competition, kind of in the lower half and kind of fit down there. But yeah, I thought that they did pretty good for coming in, and I don't think, unfortunately, the hype of that game, like the Battle of LA or whatever, was there like it should have been. I think media could have kind of hyped it up a little bit more because it was just kind of like under the rug, like, oh, this is happening. Go watch it if you want.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. And I also hate that it's the Battle of LA and not the Battle for LA. I just feel like that was like a huge missed marketing opportunity, and that sounds way cooler. But yeah, that does kind of stink, especially because like I get UCLA's unranked, but that team was on like network. Like that was on cable. So a little weird, but I'm not surprised that USC took that one. They own LA now, I guess. Okay, let's get into player of the week.
Okay.
Would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I already kind of talked about her, but my player of the week is by far Chloe Chacoin. Like I said, she played phenomenal. She played lights out. And I mean, even last year, I feel like we talked about her a lot because I think mainly because she is a phenomenal, she's a phenomenal hitter. And for being an undersized outside, she has done so well in the Big Ten. I was an undersized outside hitter at a D3 level, and it was hard. And I had to learn how to use the block. And I finally figured it out my last year, right? And she's figuring it out her sophomore year. And I think she's done so well, and she's not afraid. Like, that's the thing that I like about her play is she does not care how big that block is. Like, she will hit as hard as she can to tool it off. Like, I think she's found a lot of skill in her power and using that block, but I also think she's learning to be a smarter player as well in learning tips and roll shots and things like that, where last year we didn't see that as much, but she's come a long way with that. Also, her defense was phenomenal against Nebraska, and just in general, I think she has a lot of fire in her, which kind of helps that Purdue team keep the momentum going when she's in the back row. And she can hit from the back row too, which is amazing. I mean, when Eva Hudson's not available, they got her in the back row. And I think it's the cutest thing when they're at home and they do the little like Mario like coin noise for her. I think that's the cutest thing ever. And yeah, she played really well. And I think overall the past 2 years she's played really well and has grown a lot. And I wish she got recognized more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great pick. There was one swing she took against Nebraska where she went in at such an angle that it almost looked like she was parallel to the net, and she swung off the middle blocker's hands to the point where it went all the way across the court and out of bounds on Purdue's side. I thought it was the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I do think that every undersized hitter, regardless of what level you're at, should be watching her and learning from her. I also think that it's going to be really cool to see her play Wisconsin because Wisconsin's known for having like some of the biggest girls in college volleyball on their team. So I'm really interested to see how these newfound skills that she is using to beat blockers like Andy Jackson and Becca Alec and Merritt Beeson, how that transfers to a team like Wisconsin, who's known for their blocking. I'm really excited to see her go up against like Anna Smrek or Devin or Carter and all of them. So I think it's going to be awesome. Sweet. So I'm going to go on the other side of the net, and my player of the week is going to be Bergen Riley. I think I've chosen her before already this year, but when watching her against Purdue, I think it's like a really cool thing how I forget how old she is because it's so impressive to watch her play. And she kind of reminds me of a more advanced Sydney Hilley. Like Sydney Hilley was one of the best setters to come through, not only Wisconsin's program, but college volleyball as a whole. And I think that Bergen Riley is like a step ahead of her, especially at the age she's at. And she's just beyond impressive. I think the way she reads the court, the way she can see the defense. And one of my favorite things about her is the way she feeds hitters. There was one like string of hitting errors that Andy Jackson had, and she kept feeding her. And then I think that the smartest thing that Bergen Riley did and why I ultimately chose her was she was feeding Andy, and Andy was kill. And then they started to pick up on the way that Bergen was going to Andy, whether Andy was getting kills or getting errors. Andy would, she would take a swing on a slide and hit it out of bounds, and Bergen Riley would get the next ball back to her, go again, try again, get it again. And I think that you could see Purdue catching on to this to then the point where I think it was the end of set 3 or maybe, and it was a perfect in-system ball, and Andy Jackson took off to go behind Bergen Riley, and Bergen Riley set Merritt Beeson out of the back row, and Merritt had no blockers because they were so locked in on Andy. That is all Bergen. Yeah. Like she's so smart and it's really fun to watch. And I just think that like it's unbelievable to me that she is a sophomore. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, she is phenomenal. And I think she is wise beyond her years, and her play, she's just so nonchalant. Like she gets excited, but she's never flustered. She's never nervous. She's just having fun, right? Like, and I think that's absolutely insane. Like, I mean, her play is incredible, but like her demeanor on the court is even more impressive to me with her being only a sophomore. And she had the same thing last year. As a freshman, you come into Nebraska and the biggest stage, right? And you're playing in front of 90,000 people, and you are not rattled at all. Like you could not tell at any point, was she nervous? Was she scared? Did she not know what to do? Did she not know who to set? Like never. And that's something that only comes with like time and just experience. And I mean, most setters don't even get to that point of like being unfazed, which is pretty awesome. But I think so much of Nebraska's success is due strictly to her. because their hitters would not be where they're at if it was not for Bergen Riley. And her sets are all amazing. I mean, she, like you said, is so smart. And she's also a very big offensive threat, which I think is key for Nebraska. And any school too. If you have a setter that's an offensive threat, you can go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to give her flowers. I think I've already done that this year, but when I watched her against Purdue, that one play she ran where Andy pulled the blockers and she decided to set Merritt out of the back row. Like, she didn't even go to a front row hitter. It was just beyond smart. And it was like, when I was watching it back, I literally had my jaw on the floor. I was just like, like, that was a crazy play. It was just, I don't know. It was just executed so flawlessly that I just had to bring it up.
Yeah.
All right, let's do start and bench. Where should we start? Should we start or should we bench?
Let's bench, and I'll have you go because I'm just going to piggyback off your bench.
That's fine, because we'll probably have a decent conversation about this. So 2 weeks ago, this is who I wanted to choose as my bench, and then we ended up not filming that episode. And then last week, this is who I chose at my bench, but none of you would know that because I didn't push record. So I'm going to talk about it again. And I told Liv last week while we were talking to ourselves unknowingly that this was a hard pick for me, but also an easy pick for me because it's really gotten to the point where it's making it hard for me to watch these games. So I'm going to throw it back a little to 2 weeks ago and we can kind of talk about it. And my bench is going to be Coach Kelly Sheffield. It pains me because I am a Wisconsin fan and I've always trusted him and he's usually always come through. But this year, he's really just being the most confusing person on planet Earth. Like, I cannot get behind what is happening. Like, I don't understand the logic. I don't understand the reasoning. And it's starting to, like, physically pain me. Like, physically, it's hurting.
It's very hard to watch because of it, because you don't know what's going to happen. And I don't trust, like you said, we've always trusted him before, but like this year I don't, because I never know what's going to be put out on the court. And then halfway through, not even halfway through, 10 plays in, it changes, and then it changes another 10 plays, and then it keeps changing. And I'm like, well, there we go. We're going to lose again.
Yeah. I can't wrap my head around, like, I can't get out of my head, I should say, this idea that Wisconsin has a lot of foreign student athletes on their team. Actually, I shouldn't say a lot. I don't think it's a lot, but they have two that are constantly in the lineup, and one of them is Galche Guchkin. And I just can't, like, I just have this theory that Kelly Sheffield in particular, I don't know if other coaches have, like, deal with this, is that he recruits these girls to come and they're living in a different country. And I think that he, in a way, feels obligated to play them. Because I think that in a normal setting, I don't think that, like, Gigi would be, I guess, eligible for the libero spot compared to the two other defensive specialists that we've seen out of Wisconsin this year. So for them to go into their biggest game of the year, which was against Minnesota 2 weeks ago, and to switch up your lineup and have her as libero and Lola playing defense, like, and even when Lola is the libero and Gigi's in, he moves the defense around. So Gigi's playing in 5 and your libero's playing in 1. Like, I don't understand it. I don't know why he can't just make a decision. And it's like hard to watch as a fan. And I think that it starts there. So like Gigi can't serve receive as well as other defenders. And so that means that now you're typically out of system. And your other team is targeting your libero, and then you're out of system, and then your hitters are all off. So then the hitters are off, so he starts to rotate them around to try to find one of them to work. And then he looks at Sarah Franklin, and he's like, do something. And so I think that it's just like this mess of like, and I don't know why it's such a mess when he has one of the most talented teams in college volleyball. It's really been hard to watch. And the other thing that I really, really can't get behind is not playing Devin Robinson. Like, no. Yeah. I don't support that.
I agree. I think she should be playing, and I don't necessarily think she should be playing in the middle, personally. I think she's a great middle player, but She has not been playing middle pretty much her whole career at Wisconsin, right? So like, why choose now? You still have 4 hitters that are fighting for 2 spots, really 3 spots, with how the rotation goes. But like, I think you have better options with Cece and Carter in the middle. And I think you keep Devin on the right side. And I mean, we've always said you should be playing a 6-2. So then you can play all your hitters. Like you have a 5th-year transfer for your other setter. Let her play. When she did play, she did great. Let her play. Then you can have one big happy family. You can play all of your players, right? So like, try that. Why don't you try that instead of trying to just switch all of your hitters around in positions that they're not used to playing?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know why he won't do the 6-2, because I think that part of Wisconsin's success last year was the 6-2. And I don't even think that was necessarily the girls running the 6-2. I think it was just the 6-2. And I think that that's something that doesn't really make sense to me. And I don't know if it's because he's really so afraid of not having a DS, like another DS. Like, is that the case? I don't know, because Sarah and Julia both play all the way around. But I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know in what world it would make sense to not be playing both Anna Smrek and Devin Robinson and Cece and Carter and Sarah. I mean, he's got a bench full of hitters. What are we like? Why? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Now I haven't watched Wisconsin in a while because they've been playing opponents that they've been just like literally killing to the point where it's like not even good volleyball. So I actually haven't watched Wisconsin in a little bit, so I'm not 100% sure exactly what lineup they're running. But this was 2 weeks ago that I wrote this. And I still stand by it because he hasn't, I haven't been proved wrong yet. But yeah, the no 6-2 thing, I don't get it.
One, it's interesting too because every time that they've won, it's been with a lineup more similar to having Lola as libero, blah blah blah, and then the games that they're losing, Gigi's was the libero with Minnesota. So it's like you can see a direct correlation, and it was very clear that Gigi didn't have a good game when they played Minnesota, and she was the libero, right? Okay, clear as day. Lola, she's proven herself. Like I'm like, yeah, keep her as libero. She has earned that. The other thing that I think and I mean, I have no idea what his thoughts are, but his hesitation with the 6-2 is he has a lot of faith in Charlie and her being an offensive threat, and she is. She does good with that, a setter attacks. But is she more of an offensive threat than having Anna Smrek, a 6'9" hitter? Right? No, she's not. So like, yes, she's an offensive threat. She can still be an offensive threat running a 6-2, but she is not more of an offensive threat than a hitter is.
And he doesn't need her as an offensive threat. He has a whole bench of offensive threats.
Exactly. Like, you don't need that. You don't need it. You already have it, and you're choosing not to use what you have. So that's the part that really kind of throws me off is like, also let her train more. Let Charlie train more because you're going to need her next year to run a 5-1. Let her train more. Let her get a little bit more time off the court. Play Carly, I think is her name. Play the other setter, Carly. Like, see what happens, right? Maybe it's going to be magic. I don't know. At least try it. You're trying all these other lineups. Try 6-2.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I just think it's goofy, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
Because I think not running a 6-2 is going to make them lose to teams like Penn State and Purdue.
Yeah.
Which will suck.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking at the end of this SMU game.
I know. 27-26.
Oh, a service error. Okay. Anyway. So that actually is a perfect transition into my start because I'm starting SMU. And I hope I don't regret saying that, and I hope I don't just jinx them.
Yeah.
But more particularly, I'm starting their coach. Like, she's crazy. And there's a lot of people saying that she deserves Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Which is wild and kind of true.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's going to happen.
Wow, this is kind of crazy. That's really all I have to say. Like, I don't know how after this week you don't choose SMU as like your start, right? Actually,
Yeah.
who did you choose before I say that?
It wasn't a team.
Oh,
So
okay, good.
my start was because it's October, all of the teams breast cancer awareness, like
Oh, I love that.
jerseys and recognition towards it. Um I Stanford was one of them. Their last game that they played, they had pink jerseys. Like they had a totally different jersey instead of just like the hair ties. I was like, that's cool. Like football, they always get to have tens of thousands of jerseys that they get to switch every game. Volleyball, you get two. Like it was nice to
Yeah.
see that they actually had a jersey dedicated towards that. Nebraska had like the pink arm sleeves and everyone, has the hair ties and stuff. Um, but I always like to see it. And I thought Nebraska did a cool, I don't know exactly how it was. I don't know if it was fans or relatives or who these people were, but all women that were either survivors of breast cancer or were currently going through treatment for it came out into the court and got a recognition. So I thought that was really cool. And I always love to see just how teams represent those causes, whether it's throughout the whole month or a specific night. So that was my start.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I think it is cool too, especially when you're like a team like Nebraska, like you're playing on the largest stage in
Hmm.
college volleyball. Like you're getting these like huge plugs, ABC, ESPN.
Hmm.
You have a lot of eyes on you, so I think to take the time to recognize something like that, which a
Hmm.
lot of teams do in October, but
Hmm.
when you have the kind of audience that they have, I think any kind of cause that they put on is
Hmm.
is a great one to listen to, and yeah, I think that's a really great pick.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yay!
Hmm.
That wraps this one up.
Yeah.
And we recorded it, which is fab.
Woo!
So, any exciting games coming up, do you know?
Other than the current game that is on.
Yeah.
um, Let me pull it up quick. Have
Which,
it.
as an update, not that this matters, people, because everyone's going to already see the final score. As per speaking, it is 30 SMU to 29 Stanford.
Okay. We got a
Oh,
load.
my good friends, Arizona State's playing tonight.
Ooh. I know that. Ooh, someone plays on the 20th. I don't remember
Oh,
what team that
ooh, on
was.
Friday, Wisconsin hosts Oregon.
Ooh. That'll be
That's,
it. That should be a good game.
oh my God, it's 30-30 now.
Minnesota. Oh, Pitt and Stanford play on Sunday. Minnesota and Penn State play on Sunday.
I think those are the two big ones.
Yeah.
All right, Sunday is going to be the place to be.
Yes, yes. I don't think there's any. There's some games on Utah plays BYU on Saturday.
And that's newly ranked Utah, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's what
Um,
happens when you beat the number 17 and the number 18 back to back.
yeah. Yeah, and those are kind of the big games. Some additional conference games and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. Oh, UCLA plays Purdue tomorrow. That'll be kind of,
I gotta keep watching Purdue, man. I never
yeah.
thought I'd say that, but they're so good.
Yeah. Yeah, oh my God. Now I'm even more terrified for whenever they are playing at home. Like if they played against Nebraska like that at Nebraska, just imagine what
Oh
they
my
would have
God.
done if they were at home playing.
Oh, yeah, I know. And we play, like, Wisconsin plays Purdue and Purdue, which is going to be I'm going to not be okay. That's going to be an episode people are going to want to listen to. I can tell you that right now.
It'll be an episode just for that game. Nothing else,
Yeah.
just that game.
Yeah, just Purdue, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Just Purdue. All right. Well, I think that wraps up this episode. Again, so sorry for our absence to anyone that directly affects. And I apologize for my lack of paying attention. I will now be doing checks with Liv when I start the recording to make sure that she sees it as well. But thanks again for listening. We're looking forward to another great week of volleyball. And we'll have a lot of Wisconsin to talk about next week, which is going to be either really good or really bad. So stay tuned.